So in order to fire up my host machine, this may sound kind of weird, but I can't really show you on a physical box. I can't install any type of software to record what I'm doing to show you without an OS installed. It's kind of like I can't put gas in the gas tank of a car until I've built the car and put the gas tank in. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using some virtualization to emulate, and I'm going to go through the exact same steps that you would go through on a physical box. So here's my virtual machine. What I did is I've gone through and I've built this up, but again, this would be equivalent of your host box that's just sitting there. I've gone through and you'll notice here that I've actually put in a DVD. It's a virtualized DVD drive that has mounted to it this ISO for Server 2012 that we downloaded. This is the equivalent of you taking that ISO. I told you you'll need to take that ISO and burn that out to a DVD for the host installation. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and select that I'd like to start this bad boy up. Let the hamsters run around the wheel for a second here. So I'll hit next. My only option now is to install, because it's a brand new system, obviously. I'll hit install. We'll let the hamsters run around the wheel here. So then I'm presented with an option of which virtual machine I'd like to install. Now in this particular case, because this is just going to be my own little machine I'm going to play around with as my host machine, I'm going to install this with the standard server edition with the GUI interface. Trust me, you don't want core unless you want to go back and try to manage a server from a command line interface, which you Linux guys, you might find enjoyable. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. Then asks me to accept the EULA. I'm going to hit next. And then I can do, it's kind of funny they have the upgrade, even though it's a bare drive. You're not going to do an upgrade, you're going to do a custom install. And you can see there's my hard drive. This would be whatever size your hard drive is in your host machine. I'm going to select next. And it's going to go through the process of copying the files over first to the hard drive. Then it goes through and gets the files ready for installation. And it goes through relatively quickly. A little bit of inside info here for you guys. Microsoft, starting with Server 2008, which would have also included Windows Vista. I know, I just gave you a chill went down your spine when I said that word, Vista, huh? It's like Mufasa. Ooh. I'm kidding. What Microsoft's goal is for someone to be able to install an operating system within 15 minutes. And they've gotten, those guys that have played around with Microsoft OSs and installed them before, they are very, very close to that. In some cases, I usually get about within 15 minutes. And they're really, really close to that. Installing on a solid state drive, I've timed it and I can install a full Server 2012 box in about 8 minutes flat. Now, I'm not going to make you wait around here for 8 minutes, so we're going to pause the video, and when we come back, we'll continue where we left off. Okay, so it's gone through and going to restart for the first time. I'm going to go ahead and select restart. We don't have to wait for the green bar to go across. There's nothing magical about the green bar. Obviously, I don't want to press any key, otherwise I'll go through and start up the installation all over again. Get our wonderful Windows splash screen. Hamsters are picking up speed. It's now doing a plug-and-play detection to find out what hardware is on the device. One thing, I'm going to go ahead and cover this while we're here as well. So when we set up the host machine, we mentioned in the prereqs is that the host machine should have at least 16 gigs of memory. The one thing you don't want to do is over-allocate your memory to your virtual machines. And what I mean by that is if I've got 16 gigs, I want to make sure that of the 16, 1 gig I'm always going to keep in reserve for the host OS. So I could take the leftover, the 15 gig, and divvy that up between the different machines. And this is another reason why we talked about earlier that we're not going to fire up all the machines at the same time because you may not have enough resources to do that. Okay, so after it did the plug and play, it reboots again. And the spinning circle is supposed to hypnotize you into making you think that time is going by faster than what it really is. So look closely at the dots. You're getting very sleepy. You should buy all Microsoft products, is what it says. Okay, so the first thing it's going to go through and do is ask me to put in a password. Password does have to meet the complexity requirements initially, but we're going to go through and disable that so that we can play around a little bit easier. But for now, I'm going to put in a top secret password. And when we say it has to meet the complexity requirements, it means it has to have a combination of an uppercase, a lowercase, a number, and a special character. And I'll show you what my password is. You can see it's top secret. PA $$. Whoa, I misspelt it. Let me do that again. PA $$W0RD. So it looks just like password. There we go. And I apologize if I just guessed your passwords, because I know some of you guys are probably using this as your production password. See, that's how good of a hacker I am. Make sure both of them are the same. And this is for the local administrative account. I'm going to go ahead and hit next here. Okay, so then we're brought to an initial login screen. So we're going to go through here and we'll log in by throwing a Control-Delete. Now I can't really throw one because it's a virtual machine. So instead I'm going to come up here and do the equivalent of it. You would have thrown a Control-Delete and then you're going to type in your funky password that we typed in before. You will not see this. This is part of my virtualization environment. I'll actually go full screen so we look good now. Okay, so now again I'm going to log in here. Try this one more time. You should only have to log in once. Mine was because it's a virtual machine and I was getting in remotely. We get the awesome black screen of death. No, I'm kidding. Just a black background. Initially here. If you've got an awesomely fast machine, you're probably already waiting for me here. So hang on a second, be patient. Okay, so when it's done and settled in, we have our what they refer to as the Server Manager dashboard. We'll go through and give you some information on how to set this machine up. You can take whatever, some of the stuff isn't like as important. For example, I'm going to come in here to my local server. And when you install, by default, Microsoft gives it a computer name that's kind of random. It always starts with Win. You can come in here and you can change this to whatever name you want. I'm going to call mine Ethical Hacking Host. And it's not going to be a member domain. It's going to be just in a work group. Now this is going to require me to restart my computer. I'm not necessarily going to restart right now. I can always restart later. And I'm also going to go through and make sure I've got an IP address because my virtual machine is not hooked up to the internet. I don't have one. If this is your host machine and you've got it behind your router, you should get an IP address and it should be able to get out to the internet. One of the other things I'm going to do on this host machine is I'm going to turn off the wonderful IE enhancement security configuration, which is the setting that basically bugs you every time on a server. You want to go to a website, it'll bug you and say, are you sure you want to allow this website? Are you sure you want to allow this website? Are you sure you want to allow this website? Over and over and over. Right now it's on. I'm going to come in here and click on the on section and select I'd like to actually turn these off, both for the administrator and for a user who may log in. I'm also going to change my time zone here. I'm not Pacific. I am a mountain. Hit OK. As far as the reporting is concerned, I'm going to turn that off just because this is a demo machine. Normally, real servers, I turn this on because what happens is that Microsoft is and the NSA is allowed to spy on you. No, I'm teasing. What this does is it actually helps Microsoft. They don't collect in for detailed information or private information about you or like what product code you're using and stuff. What they do collect is information about when the machine crashed. The reason why I enjoy turning this on is I've actually had it help me where I was having some problems, and then down here my little action center, it actually popped up. Oh, look at that. They've already solved an issue for me. They will tell you, I had it pop up and say, hey, we found an issue for you. The issue was concerning a chipset driver from Intel, and it actually gave me a direct link to Intel, not just to the Intel.com. They weren't that lazy. It took me to the actual web page to download that particular driver. So it's telling me here that the smart screen is going to be turned on currently, or excuse me, it's currently turned off, which means it's going to not warn me when I download files and try to execute them from the internet. I'm going to just turn off those messages so I don't see those again. And, yep, oh, there's still one more problem. What's the important message? Let me look at my messages here. That may be a false positive popping up on me here. Yeah, that's not going to stop me from continuing to configure. So let's continue on. And you'll notice here, just for this demo, I'm using a whopping 2 gig of RAM. Obviously, in your host machine, you're going to want to have the 16 gig. I'm just trying to show you how to get the host machine here set up. The big thing that we really want to do here is I want to come back to my dashboard. Technically, you don't have to necessarily come back to the dashboard. Makes it easy because you can get to this configure this local server option, but you can also get to it under the managed section. Where I'm trying to get to is this add roles and features. So I can click either up there or down here. I'm going to select to add a role or a feature, and the feature role that I'm going to add is I'm going to hit next here. It's role based, and it's going to be my particular server. Actually, you know what? Before I do this, let's back out and let's reboot just so I get the new computer name listed up here. There's one more setting that we'll want to change since we're requiring a reboot here. We're going to go into the control panel real fast. So I'm going to hit the start button and just simply type in control panel, or type in control, and control panel should populate here. I could have also hit the icon that was listed on the start menu. I'm then going to come into my system and security section, and under system, I'm going to come in, and you may know a different way of getting here, and that's cool. We're just going to go in here to the advanced system settings, and under the performance section, under my settings option, I'm going to go all the way over here to the data execution prevention. And what I want to do here, the default is for data execution prevention to be turned on for all programs and services except for those selected below. I want to turn that off. I want to make it so that it's only for Windows programs and services. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. It tells me it has to reboot. See, I saved myself a reboot. Hit OK again. Go ahead and close this down. And let's go ahead and reboot this bad boy. I'm going to right-click on the Start window, select Shutdown or Sign Out, and I'm going to do a restart. Have to give it a reason why I'm restarting. We'll just say Other Planned, and we'll let it restart. Okay, now that that's restarted, we're going to go in, log back in again. Oops, come on. Put in our top secret password. Okay, after it's rebooted, oh, looks like I got a couple services having a problem, but they should clear themselves up here. I'm just going to click on it real fast to make sure. I'm going to right-click and see what it is. Yeah, these are automatic delays, so these eventually will come up. Okay, so what I can't fully show you is how to install the Hyper-V server. Because this box is virtualized, I can't install a virtualization on it. I mean, that's like endless mirrors. You know how you put two mirrors facing each other and they go on forever? We can't do that. So I'm going to take you through step by step, though. But at some point, I'm going to have to stop because I'll actually get a failure. But you will continue on to install the Hyper-V role. So how do we install Hyper-V? It's very easy. We're going to go through and add a role or a feature. I'm going to hit Next. It's going to be a role-based installation. Hit Next. Asks for the server. It's our EH host machine. And the role we're going to install is Hyper-V. It tells me that it needs to install some additional tools for Hyper-V to work, and those are going to be our GUI-based tools as well as a PowerShell environment for Hyper-V. I'm going to hit Add the Feature. And this is where it's going to tell me here that it can't be installed. You will just simply continue to hit Next, take the defaults. Let me jump out to a screenshot here for you, so hang on a second. So after you select that as a role to install, you'll be then presented with basically a summary screen of about what you're about to do. You're going to go ahead and select Next. It'll then go through and try to identify the network adapter that's on your host machine. If you don't see one listed here, it's because you need to install a driver for that NIC. We're going to use this NIC, or what's the concept here is that virtual machines can actually gain access to the public network or outside of their virtual environment using a network interface. Hyper-V just needs to be aware of it. So you're going to select your NIC. It then is making some assumptions about the fact that you may be trying to do a migration, or you may want to support what they refer to as live migrations, where you can have one Hyper-V virtual machine move from one server to another Hyper-V server. You don't need to worry about this. This is not a Hyper-V class. That's not what we're trying to accomplish here. So you just leave the defaults, which is not to select the checkbox. And then finally, it's going to show you your default store locations. Where do you want to put the virtual machines, as well as where do you want to put the configuration files? And you can change these up if you want. Maybe point them to the directory of your CEH project folder, or you can leave it here as well. If this again was a Hyper-V class, we would teach you to do something a little bit different. So it's going to require a restart, maybe 2 restarts. And what's happening during these restarts is it goes through and takes the parent OS, which is the OS you just installed, and in between it and the actual hardware, it places what we refer to as a hypervisor, which in our case is Hyper-V. And what this does for us is it allows, in this case then, for the hardware to interact that's hosted on the host OS to be accessible to the child partitions or the child operating systems or the virtualized machines without having to recreate them over and over. We actually just use the same drivers. Whatever drivers are loaded on the host machine get utilized so long as the virtual machines are supported by Hyper-V. They should use the same drivers, and it's really, really quite smooth. So that's what you're doing. And you can always uninstall Hyper-V if you want to as well. Okay, so now that we've talked about that, I'm going to pause the tape here just for a second. I'm going to flip out and show you after the machine's been installed with Hyper-V. Okay, so after you log in, if there's not a Hyper-V manager icon on your desktop, you should be able to find it under your Start menu, or just simply by clicking on the Windows Start button in the bottom left-hand corner and type in Hyper-V. And then I put a shortcut. I'll actually right-click on it and say, please just add it to my desktop as a shortcut. And here it is right here. When you double-click on it, or you don't have to necessarily put it on your desktop, but when you open it up regardless, you're going to be taken into the Hyper-V management console. Now, you can see here that I've got my Bat Top, which is my laptop here. I've got the Bat Cave and Bat Cave 2. I've got a couple of different Hyper-V servers in my network environment. I'm pretending at this point that the Bat Top is actually the host machine, which it is in my case. It's my host machine at this point. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is I'm going to want to install, remember how we said we need to make sure these machines are networked together, but they can't talk to the host machine, nor can they talk out to the internet or to our production environment. Well, we do that by creating what they refer to as virtual switches. So I'm going to come over here on my right-hand side and select I'd like to create a virtual switch. And the virtual switch that I'm going to create is going to be, I have either external, internal, or private. And let me tell you, give you a crash course here on Hyper-V. If I select external, nice little description down here, it tells you that if the if the virtual machines are hooked onto this network, they will have access to the network card, which would be access to the production environment, and the internet if the host machine has access to the internet. It means that the virtual machines will all get their own IP addresses as well. So they were picked up as just standard machines on your network. The internal network, if I select this one, this basically says the virtual machines can talk to each other as well as they can talk to the host machine, but they can't get beyond the host machine. And I don't want that to take place either. Instead, I'd like to do a private network and a private switch. And a private switch means that the virtual machines can only talk to themselves, and that is it. They can't talk to the host machine, which is my Bat Top machine. They only talk to each other. So that's what I'd like to create. I'm going to select to create the switch. You'll notice it created it. The default, Microsoft doesn't know what to name it. They just call it new virtual switch. So I'm going to type this one in, or I'm going to create a name and just call it Hacking Network. So I know what that is. And if I need to change it, maybe I go, oops, I actually wanted that to be an external. You can switch it over to external. You then select which network adapter you want to put this on. Be careful if you ever decide to do a virtual machine this way, because it will interrupt the host connectivity because it has to hook into it. And so you'll lose internet connectivity or network connectivity to the host machine for about 3 seconds as it configures it. But in our case, again, we're just doing a private network. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And there's my host machine with Hyper-V ready for me to start installing my virtual machines.